Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody is having a fantastic day. We have been at the shop for quite a while. Just a quick time lapse there in the beginning, but we have been here getting the first gen done. We have finally had time to wrap this project up. It's taken a little bit longer than I had hoped, a little bit longer than I expected, but we are in the clear. We are finally done working on the first gen on this spring install. New ball joints, new springs. We had previously already put new shocks on, previously already done brakes, all the steering and suspension, steering shaft, basically minus the steering gear box. The whole entire front end and the rear end, for that matter, are pretty much brand new. All new brakes. Pretty much everything. I'd love to spend time to further take this thing apart and paint and powder coat and make everything nice. I know we still need to do that, but now is not quite the right time to do any of that. We'll get to that later on, but as of right now, everything is back together. We are ready to throw some new wheels and tires on this thing. You guys know that I had previously mentioned way back when we had first got the wheels and tires for the gear alloy 20x12 that those were kind of like a temporary setup. So we have come into some new wheels, and if you watched yesterday's video, you might kind of get a hint on where I'm going with this. But we have some new wheels that are bigger, a little bit beefier, a little bit more sidewall. I'm hoping that the additional height that the springs have gained us is going to be enough to clear these bad Larrys. But for everything I read, we were supposed to gain about an inch and a half, and that was the difference front to back of what we had. The rear was an inch and a half higher than the front, so we are going to throw these guys on and see exactly what we're left with now, and if we maybe need to come up in the back or where we're at. But what wheels and tires do we have? There they are. They are Andy's old wheels and tires that we took off of his mega cab. If you guys didn't see yesterday's video, Andy's going to be getting some new wheels and tires. I told him that I was interested in these, but I needed to see with the springs if we were going to be able to clear them. So obviously you can tell a little bit of a height difference. That is a 285 55 20 versus the 265 50 20, which, you know, this is a very small tire. We kind of knew that. I needed to get my feet wet on what I could and couldn't clear with the first gen. I was very unfamiliar. So these pretty much cleared no problem, even with the lower springs. So I'm hoping with the bigger springs, we are going to be able to clear these. Those are a -40 versus a -44 offset, which these are going to stick out just a little bit less than these guys. So hopefully, I'm hoping that these are fine. They clear. When we threw on the forces the last time, they definitely were not okay. So still a 20x12 wheel, definitely with a little bit beefier of a tire. You can see the difference here. These have much bigger sidewall. Those are definitely very rounded, very stretched. These are not so stretched. I'm sure somebody and everybody's not gonna still love these. I'm sure people are gonna still like the old school look, which I don't disagree with, but we're gonna throw these on and now see kind of what lift we gained and what we can clear now with a little bit additional height. So without further ado, we're just gonna get these things on there, set this thing on the ground, and see what we have gained, lost, etc., where the suspension's sitting now. So here we go. Alrighty, so before I show you the full look here, measure the front. We're at about 35 roughly in the front now, and we are in the back about 34.5. So even though we changed tire sizes, they're the front and the back, we gained 2 inches in the front. Now I know that these springs are going to settle a little bit, and a 1/2 inch is not that much, but look at what we've done now. We have lifted the front of this thing pretty good. And I love the front, don't get me wrong. I like the ride height that it's at. It definitely gives it a little bit more of a tougher look in the front rather than it being a little low. I do really like it. Now, what I don't like is the fact that we have now raked this thing in the opposite direction. So it looks like, and obviously again, we need to let these springs settle a little bit, but what I'm thinking now is we need to go back up in the rear just a little bit. We did take a little height out of the rear initially, but I think that we now have to put some back in, which I'm not all that worried about. That's not a too terrible thing to do, except for the springs we took out, we kind of threw away, I think, because, of course, who is going to ever need those again? So we might have to do a little bit of digging. I think we can source springs elsewhere, but I think we might just have to throw a spring back in it. Not a huge deal, but let me know what you guys think of the new wheels and tires. Now, if you look at how close they are, doesn't really seem like we might have too much luck turning these either. It's definitely better than the last time, but I don't know how close it is actually going to be. But let me know what you guys think. The rear is obviously still going to be wider. We still need to do something with the front, which we are going to save for another time. But here's where we're at. Here's where we're at right now. I'm going to fire this thing up and see how close we actually are in the front. Again, I know the springs are going to settle a little bit, but I'm digging how tough the front end now looks up a little bit more with a little bit beefier of a sidewall. The other option that we have is we can go down on the tires just a little bit. I did actually look up the dimensions of these specific tires compared to our last ones. The Goodyear Forteras that we had on here, those small tires, 265/50/20 measures 30.5 tall by 11 wide. Now these measure a 32.5, so 2 inches taller, and 11.7, so pretty much almost 12 wide. So these are about an inch wider and about 2 inches taller. Alrighty, so it does look like even before these springs settle a little bit, we have some clearance. So that is not even a full steering wheel lock turn into the front. So that is a little bit of an issue. Now, surprisingly, if we go over to the back, and again, I know springs are not settled, but that looks like it would fully lock if the front would let it. It looks like that would clear, not a problem, and not be an issue. So I don't know if we were gonna leave these on here, if we were gonna keep this tire size, which I'm not really sure. I gotta let this all digest before I even get the next game plan going for the front, but looks like we really wouldn't have to trim the back, which I'm happy about. I don't really wanna trim that part of the fender. Now, if you look up here, the front part of the fender is not really, super structural. We could trim that if we did want to. So this is where I'm gonna tell you to let me know what you guys would do. Let me know how you like the front to the back. Let me know what you think about the tire size and how it looks and what you guys would do with the clearance issues. Would you guys, if you had the option to maybe go back down to like a 31-inch tall tire, which would definitely even help this further to gain a little bit more clearance, even though with that, if we did that, we still might have to trim. Alrighty, so I've been staring at this a little while longer here. And I'm not sure. I mean, they're 32.5 talls, right? Right? Okay. It just looks like the tires are too big. It looks like it overpowers the body. If you look at it long enough, it looks like these things are like almost 35s on this body for some reason. It's giving it the look that it's not the wheels that are too big, because we already had 20s on this. It's just like, look at it from here. It looks like the tires are just too big. I don't know. Like I said, leave a comment. I'm interested. I'm going to read all your comments. One other last thing here I want to mention is that these center caps actually, diameter-wise, pretty much almost fit. The hardware is actually not, the hardware on the SCS axle cap is not letting it go back in far enough. So we are almost sitting, but maybe like 1/4 of an inch from getting flush, which is actually a lot better. As you guys remember, the gold cap had to show on the last center caps, which I liked, didn't look bad. But there is the final look of the evening one last time with the new setup. Now it kind of looks like, every angle you go look at, it looks different, but the front does measure a 1/2 inch higher than the back. The back gap in between the wheel well just doesn't look enough. Just doesn't look enough. Alrighty guys, it is about 9:30 now. Time to wrap it up and go home and have dinner with the wife. I know today a lot of the work was done off camera, but we did get the front end back together and done, which was my ultimate goal, and try and figure out, get this thing back on the ground, see where we're at. So probably a little bit of a shorter video, not as in-depth as per usual. So we'll be back tomorrow. Hit that like button before you guys leave. It really does help the channel out a ton. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys would do with this first gen that we have not found a suspension setup that we are really fully in love with yet, but we'll get it figured out. We'll get it ironed out. We're gonna start getting the seats done and all of that stuff, all that happy stuff. So anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Like button, subscribe. See you.